Hello, I'm Mark Alvis. I will give this presentation that was developed by me and my collaborator, Ricker Dockham. We have previously presented at SEAL's conference, at SEAL's on regional words for household structures, and there are numerous digital lexical databases and reconstructions of languages that are used nowadays for these kinds of studies. I published and presented on various topics such as those listed here over the last decade. And Ricker adds to this large quantities of CRDI data. There's currently not a single CRDI database, and so this is very helpful. And for this talk, we are looking at regional word forms related to textiles and textile production. We're considering their geographic distribution among language families in the region, etymological sources, the earliest evidence of their entry into mainland Southeast Asia, and some possible additional details of the timing. And relevant ethnohistorical data. And then we were considering the historical linguistic characterizations that we can make of past language contact. For the senses in this study, they fall into these four groups of implements, textile materials, other elements, and related actions. And the terms here are fairly general. Highly precise terms tend not to be widespread. Still, when we combine this data with the data from other semantic domains, we can get a clearer picture of the ethnohistorical linguistic situation in the region, but even in this semantic domain itself. So note that we're focused on the weaving of fabric, not of plating of baskets, mats, or the like, which is also kind of weaving. Now, there is not enough time to give a full background of the ethnohistory of textile production in the region, and we are not qualified to do that anyways. But briefly, we find no clear archaeological evidence of weaving in the very early Hoabinhian period. But during the Neolithic agricultural revolution in mainland Southeast Asia, which starts in the archaeological literature generally at the end of the third millennium BCE, there are spindle whorls in the region used to fashion string. So note that this is the period that is now considered widely to be the time of the Austroasiatic dispersal. So this suggests that Austroasiatic peoples brought these spindle whorls with them. However, there's no clear evidence of what they did with that string, and I should be careful not to say too much about this. Again, I'm not qualified to say so much about it. Around the beginning of the Common Era, there is evidence of the Han people's presence in northern Vietnam. And there is textual evidence, at least textual evidence, of trade contact between India and mainland Southeast Asia. So that is reasonably good support for that. The timing, finally, the timing of the Southwest Dai expansion into mainland Southeast Asia can be debated, but we take the position of the time around the beginning of the second millennium CE. And this allows us to consider periods of loanwords. Okay. So for the BCE period, there is no clear evidence, no solid evidence of the spread of these words in mainland Southeast Asia, but hypothetically, there could be some among a few of the words we're presenting. Instead, starting from the early first millennium, there is evidence of both borrowing from Chinese and Indic, specifically Sanskrit, based on the phonological forms. Then in the second millennium, both Southwest Dai and Vietnamese were sources of loanwords, and these included both native words in those languages and words borrowed from Chinese or Indic. Now, this will all become clearer as we look at the lexical data. And let's start with that. Loom here. In the data we present here, approximate phonological forms, the hook and ki you see on the left side, not reconstructions, since these word forms are in multiple language groups. Um, in this table, the hook form is widespread in Dai and Southwest Dai. There's a Dai form reconstructed with TR, but the hook is what we see today, and in the other Austroasiatic languages. Now, there's significant time depth of this item in Dai, but it would have spread into Austroasiatic only in the second millennium after the Southwest Dai expansion. The next item, this gi form, is likely a Chinese loanword. It has been reconstructed in Southwest Dai, but is much more widespread well, it is also widespread in Austroasiatic, as you can see there. It is also found in some Hmong-Mien and Tibeto-Burman languages. But overall, the picture we see here is largely an instance of a Southwest Dai borrowing of this Chinese loanword into Austroasiatic hill tribe languages. And this is a pattern we've seen before in other studies, and we'll see again in later slides. Note, while Chinese is a probable donor of this word in Southwest Dai, the Kredai branches have a variety of words for looms that are pretty deep history. So the history of weaving and the archaeological record suggests deeper history in southern China, especially of weaving with looms. So the history of such weaving predates the Chinese expansion into mainland Southeast Asia and southern China. So this does not mean that Chinese introduced loom weaving, but rather for whatever reason, this word was borrowed and added to the existing inventory, lexical inventory in the semantic domain of weaving. This is something to keep in mind in general. Okay. Next, there are a few widespread word forms for needle. The kem sim form is another likely Chinese loanword. The K onset indicates early borrowing, possibly to the Old Chinese period, as you can see the K form and the OC Old Chinese form, while the palatalized T onset indicates later borrowing in the Middle Chinese period, but potentially later, it depends on the language. It is widespread in Kredai, but there are different forms in different areas, suggesting different timings of this. That's more complicated. But as for mainland Southeast Asia, the Southwest Dai K onset forms apparently spread into, those are the ones that spread into Austroasiatic. But in Vietic specifically, there are multiple early Chinese borrowings of this too that are really from the Old Chinese period and based on the kind of onset that they have. So it's quite early in northern Vietnam. In Hmong Mien, the T form is borrowed widely in the Mienic branch. Note that we present Hmong Mien data because there are Hmong Mien languages in mainland Southeast Asia, but of course they came into mainland Southeast Asia only in recent centuries. It's not clear how much impact they have had on the spread of words in general. Another word here, Njul, it appears in pre-Angkorian inscriptions quite early, and then in neighboring minority Austroasiatic languages. So this highlights Khmer as a likely donor language, but also as a potential conduit for loanwords from other languages, such as Indic or Chinese. Finally, there is the Trum form, which is ultimately an Austronesian etymon, so it can't be from Austroasiatic. But it appears to have spread from Chamic into Bahnaric and Kituic in Vietnam, but on the Malay Peninsula from Malay to Aslian. When, though, it's unknown timing. As for string or thread, there are two forms, the Sen and Dai forms, and these are likely Southwest Dai donors. Southwest Dai loan words into some Austroasiatic languages. This is further evidence of the spread of words in this semantic domain among the Austroasiatic hill tribe languages in the second millennium, but it's still difficult to determine even approximate timing unless additional information is determined for those specific languages. It would be helpful to know that, but we don't have that yet. Next, an important word, cotton. As for cotton, the Indic Karpasa has long been known in the literature as a likely source for languages, for this word form and for languages in the region. But sorting out the timing and path of transmission is more difficult. It appears to have been borrowed early in the first millennium. Old Khmer inscriptions for a related derived form, ampas, date to the pre-Angkorian period. How this spread variously to Old Chinese and Dai is a matter requiring more research. Um, Even in Vietnamese, the form suggests early first millennium borrowing based on the phonological shape. Okay, another form here, the Bry form there, has been posited by Thurgood to be an Austroasiatic loan into Chamic. I believe he assumed that based on kind of the phonological naturalness of the word shape. Um, so we mark this as a possible Austroasiatic item, though the timing of the borrowing yet again cannot be determined other than perhaps in the second millennium. I just don't know. Okay, silk. Uh, for the sense of silk, this includes substance, the substance, thread, or fabric. There are three forms, widespread forms. The first two, the Pre and Mai forms, appear to be likely Southwest Dai words that spread into Austroasiatic languages, yet again. Although there's that one instance in P, in Tibeto-Burman, so one instance of Dai into Tibeto-Burman there. The third item, the C form down at the bottom, is a likely Chinese word that spread probably via both Southwest Dai and Vietnamese, which both borrowed this at least back into the first millennium, although I'm less sure about the Southwest Dai instance. But that in Vietnamese, it is an early Chinese loan that predates the Sino-Vietnamese layer. I leave it to Kredai specialists to determine the timing of the borrowing in Dai and Gamsui languages, but it's being so widespread, it could have been borrowed very early. But, okay, there two more Southwest Dai loanwords include the Ksui form for shuttle of a loom and the Mon word for silkworm. Note that while they do not appear very widespread in Austroasiatic languages based on available data, I think we should keep in mind that linguists collect data often collect based on whatever limited word lists they might have brought with them, and they might not have included words such as shuttle or silkworm. So it's an open question as to how widespread any of these words really are, and I would anticipate some additional instances of these among Austroasiatic languages. Indeed, ethnographers would be in a good position to gather such data, and I hope that happens. Indigo, or the overlapping semantic of blue, sense of blue. Another likely Indic word is this one for indigo, this kram form. You can see there the Sanskrit grama, and there are a few other words with gram as the root. Like cotton, the use of indigo has been posited to be an innovation in India that spread elsewhere in Asia to the east there. So like cotton, we also see a reconstruction in Old Chinese for this, but unlike cotton, this is not found in the database of Old Khmer epigraphs, so I'm not sure how to date that. Wish we had that. It's not there. It is difficult to determine the path of transmission of this word. It will take more work. As for kiao, there, the next word, there we have this blue-green, that so-called gru, and this is a very widespread in Kredai, being found in Dai, Plai, and Gamsui, practically Proto-Kredai, I suppose. Anyways, it is spread widely among Austroasiatic languages from Southwest Dai, so that would be in the second millennium. And oops. Beyond nouns, there are a couple of verbs. In relation to indigo, there's the verb for to dye of fabric. We consider this a viable Chinese loanword. I think Audricourt noticed this about 70 years ago. That spread regionally, and the tone category suggests borrowing into Kredai languages, Vietic and Mienic, in the first millennium CE, like based on basically the tone category. And then there would be likely borrowing into other Austroasiatic languages and Chamic in the second millennium. We do not have enough knowledge of Tibeto-Burman phonological history to explain those apparently related forms. Oh, but it did, yes. Okay. And finally, there are two words, word forms, with the meaning of to mend, though sometimes the meaning can include the sense of to sew in general. As with to die, there is an old Chinese form, and this appears to be a first millennium CE borrowing in Vietic. Indeed, it would be likely the beginning of the first millennium based on the onset, that onset lenition ba in P in Old Chinese, but V in Vietnamese. As for the timing of the borrowing into Kradai, more checking of the phonological data is needed. As for Tibeto-Burman, again, there are multiple possibilities, but it is difficult for us to make specific claims based on this provisional reconstruction in the STET database. Finally, lastly, there is the DOP form, which is reasonably widespread in Southwest Dai, to suggest it is the Southwest Dai is the donor. Southwest Dai languages are the donors to the various Austroasiatic groups here. Indeed, in the 13th century description of the Chinese traveler Zhou Daguan, Dai peoples were known in Cambodia. Dai peoples were known for their skills with mending. So altogether, this is possible corroborating evidence of that, but that would again require more ethnohistorical and ethnographic study. So to summarize the data, oops. We see the Indic words for cotton and indigo spreading throughout East and Southeast Asia from at least the first millennium, and if not the late BCE period. We see several Chinese words, not just nouns, but there are also two verbs. And this suggests language contact that was not just about trade, but rather some bilingualism and the transmission of cultural practices. And this started at least in the early first millennium with the Han Dynasty expansion and potentially earlier in some places. But in mainland Southeast Asia, certainly the early first millennium in northern Vietnam. Then with the Southwest Dai expansion, there are both native words, such as those listed here, and various Chinese loanwords in those Southwest Dai languages that spread variously into Austroasiatic, into Chamic, and Tibeto-Burman sometimes, though that's, again, the situation in Tibeto-Burman is difficult to clarify at this point. And finally, there is some back and forth between Austroasiatic and Malayo-Chamic. So altogether, all of this matches what is generally understood from previous studies of language context situations in the region. But I think that this particular study is a concise and useful case study of these kinds of words and in the semantic domain. So thank you for your time, and questions and comments are welcome.